All right, welcome everyone. My name is Doug Bertram. I'm going to be your presenter today to talk about accounts payable automation for your remote workforce. We're very excited to be part of DynamicsCon's inaugural presentation here, and kind of looking forward to chatting with you guys a little bit to talk about payables automation for the remote workforce. Today's presentation, we're going to kind of do a little bit of a combination of a few PowerPoints to kind of set the stage, and then I actually have live product that we're going to jump over to a virtual machine and show you our AP automation solution that is very tightly integrated with Microsoft Dynamics BC. So today's presentation, we're going to kind of focus on that integration with BC. We do actually work with all the Microsoft Dynamics platforms, so we can, if you are on the line and have one of those other ones, we can certainly chat afterwards, and there'll be an opportunity, emails and things like that that I will put up on the presentation here. So with that, I'll kind of get going, and we'll go through this. So. All right. So today's remote workforce, with the environment that we've been thrown in this year with COVID, it really becomes more important than ever. The traditional advantages that people ask us about still apply. AP automation has been, we've been doing this for 40 years and kind of really been very tightly integrated with the whole Microsoft Dynamics platform for the last 10. And the control, efficiency, and visibility, those are usually the pretty common things that we used to hear when people would come and ask us to help them with AP automation. And now with the whole COVID and everybody working remote, it becomes even more imperative. And to me, the hardest part about working from home now is to remember when I have webinars like this to make sure that I put on my best jammies for the audience, and we can kind of go through that. But so really kind of the environment we've been thrown into is, who's in the office anymore to open up the mail, walk something down the hall, talk to somebody else, dig around in file cabinets and all those types of things. And so that's where really what kind of threw us into a challenge here. And the advantage here is that once you do put some platforms like Metafile in place to automate your processes and help make things better in this remote workforce environment and take care of some of these things, you'll still be able to leverage that efficiencies when hopefully soon we'll all go back to work and all be in the office and be able to socialize with our coworkers and things like that. But really, so empowering that remote workforce is very, very imperative right now. And like I said, you be able to, when you get back in the office, the things that you do here being more efficient, saving time and money, better collaboration with your coworkers and things like that. All of that is still something that you'll be able to leverage when you implement a solution like Metaviewer and be able to get back into the office. So really how the system, we really helps you with the efficiencies is capturing data electronically. So we actually sponsored a paper with Ardent Partners who kind of analyzes and talks and surveys a lot of AP departments. And one of the trends that we've seen over the years, we've been sponsoring papers like this for many, many years to try and keep our fingers on the tabs of what's important to AP organizations. And one of the trends that we've seen is the number of suppliers that are sending invoices electronically. A lot of vendors are now they'll set their ERP up or their financial system to automatically email you an attached PDF as an invoice, and we're seeing this finally surpass more send them that way than not. And so that's really exciting. What we found when we work with clients is that they still get some paper invoices, mainly because they've never asked the vendor to do it any other way. And if you don't have an automation system to deal with that, then you probably don't want them electronically, because then that would require you to print them off and do those types of things. But when you do implement an AP automation solution, one of the things that we do is we can watch those email boxes automatically. And so nobody has to watch that email. We just automatically, when an email comes into that box, we automatically pull in the attached invoice, preventing that paper from ever happening, but more importantly, preserving the textual information that it contains, because then it can go into our system. We can extract that data, and we use the data to index or identify what the document's all about. But ultimately, we can push that transaction over and create that transaction in your BC system. So you didn't enter any data into Metaviewer, you didn't enter any data into the into BC as well. So that's where the first step of really increasing your efficiencies. And since there's nobody, no opening the mail and scanning things in the office because everybody's working from home, that's where it really becomes powerful in that case. The second big aspect of your efficiencies in this remote automation implementation is, what if the system could things so nobody has to do anything, right? Wouldn't that be nice? So some of the things that we do with some straight through processing, that data extraction, being able to eliminate that data entry. Once we get that data, we can analyze that data. The software can go out and match that information to information that's in your BC system, your Dynamics BC system. So if we extract a purchase order number off of the invoice, for example, we can make sure that that's a PO in an open state in BC. We run a series of checks and balances against it. If everything checks out, we can then automatically match that invoice to the goods received against that purchase order in BC, and it really has to touch it in Metafile. It actually comes in, it gets all matched, and we push the transaction over there, and it's just ready to be posted for payment. When it comes to non-PO invoices, we can automate those as well. We have a lot of clients that will set up default account codes, GL accounts and dimensions for a particular vendor within BC. If you do have the system set up that way, we can then pull and automatically code the invoice. And then we can also remember by parameters like company or vendor or division or department or something like that, who are the approvers? And so then we can automatically even send it to those approvers. And if you've got varying levels of that built into your BC system, over time, you can kind of maybe add a little bit more of that to make the system more and more automated. But otherwise, the system, you can walk invoices through that. If it wasn't a perfect match on a PO, you can, the system allows you and gives you access to all that information to be able to do what you need to do. You can change the coding, you can pick different approvers if it's different this time, and things like that. So really that workflow, that automated workflow in an AP automation solution really helps lend some validity and some consistency to your processes. We all have our rules. We all know what what we're supposed to do from checks and balances of processing invoices. But some of that, you get people that come and go, and over time, it's kind of like the telephone game. People that message doesn't always necessarily get articulated properly, and everybody kind of has their own interpretations. Well, when you program a workflow and those checks and balances and those processes into an automated system, it's very consistent. It does the same thing every time, and so that kind of, it comes in and it goes to others. The other aspect of a workflow system that controls these documents is, we find that approvers really love using the system because they have access to all the information that they need. It's all stored in a consistent place. We probably all can think of those problem approvers, those people that seem to take forever to get the invoices approved. And what we found is, it's not that they don't want to comply, that they want to make your life miserable. But in a paper-based world, what happens is they get that invoice on their desk and they look at it and like, oh, I need to look up something on this thing. And then they set it on their desk and somebody comes in and distracts them. Meanwhile, other papers come in and it gets buried and they forget about it. In an automated system, they're all stored in a queue that they can access through. In our case, they access it right from their browser. They can go right in there and they can see their approval queue. So they always know where that's at. The system can send them email reminders to make sure that they're following up, and kind of micromanage that kind of stuff without people having to get involved. And when they do open that invoice up, they have links to the purchase order, the packing slip, any other information that they need, how it's coded, all that kind of stuff. And so it allows them to easily make those decisions. And so we see approvers typically without automation, they're in the 10 days to 2 weeks sometimes to approve invoices. Many times that goes under 2 days, usually a day or two, just because of the things that the automation solution can bring to that organization. All right. Reporting and analytics. So because we're automating the processing of these transactions, and all that data is stored in SQL, it really allows you to improve your processes even further. So if you can take for your AP staff, for those folks that are in the AP world right now, if you can eliminate all those mundane tasks like manually keying information into the systems and hounding approvers to get approvals, if you can get rid of all that busy work, you can focus your time more on value add type of stuff and being able to look at all the data of these transactions that are coming. We have nice reports and things like that that tell you, what kinds of problems do we typically see from certain vendors, or you can manage your spend management and get better discounts from your vendors and really increase the profitability of your organization. And so those reporting and analytics that are really tightly built into the system really help you bring that value to your organization. Okay. We're really seeing a trend towards more cloud technology systems. So for probably the last 8-10 years here, we've offered our solution as on-premises type of implementations and hosted. So an on-premises installation is we take all the software and install it on your servers in your organization. Hosted, we have a very secure data center with the redundancies and everything built in, and the tables have turned. I think more of our new implementations, people are more looking towards that cloud, and really the advantage to there is we can implement a solution a lot quicker because we take care of all the infrastructure, and for your purpose, for your benefit, you don't have to worry about all that, and we take care of all the backups and the administration, making sure the servers are up to date on a regular basis, making sure the Metaviewer software is up to date. So for the fee that you pay us to utilize the software, we take care of your support, we take care of all those backups and that infrastructure. We're seeing a lot more people leaning towards that hosted environment as opposed to the on-premises solution. Functionality-wise, the systems are identical, but really that move to the cloud in the BC world here too, right? So BC is a cloud offering as well. So that's where in the BC world, I would say almost all of our implementations and for BC have been cloud based. All right, so that's kind of the overview of kind of, like I said, what's important to how to empower your remote workforce, where the automation can really lend some value. So let's jump over to my virtual machine and kind of show you a few things. All right, so I got a bunch of documents sitting in a folder here. I'm going to kick off a task that's going to start watching that folder. So generally you wouldn't do this in demo modes. I kind of like to kick things off like this just so you can see things that are in that system. Typically we've got the system set to watch multiple email boxes, watch multiple folders, and depending on the email box or the folder that we pulled it from, we know what kind of document it is, where it goes into the system, and then we start bringing that in. So you can see now that I started that, it pulled those invoices out of that folder as well as some other places, and they feed right into that Invoice Accelerator tool that we created. That's the tool that's going to intelligently read that document and extract the data. So you don't have to manually key that information in. And so if I go over to my browser now, and our standard interface for working with Metaviewer is a browser. So I'm going to open up my browser. I'm going to click the link for that I have a shortcut to my Metaviewer system, and then I go right into the system and I interact with everything right here. Now, the other thing I do differently in demo mode is I prompt myself for some username and password here. Some people still do that. Otherwise, if we do an on-premises installation, we can actually sync with your Active Directory credentials and then take you in automatically. In demo mode, I like to show what it looks like for different people, like a buyer or like an AP person, what it looks like for an approver and stuff like that. So I kind of change out the login information there. So we're going to log in as this AP user just to kind of get the ball rolling here. So when you go into Metaviewer, you're taken to your home page here, and this is really your dashboard of everything that you're authorized to see and do in the system. This particular view here, I probably got a little bit more things than the typical user. Each grouping of queries here is usually a role, and so when you add users to Metaviewer, you say what is their role or roles in the organization, and that's what controls what they have the rights to see and do here. So Typically, this person, you can see what they've got about 6 or 7 different roles here. Typically, it's usually more common for 2 or 3 roles, right, rather than this many roles. But I try to minimize how much I have to log in and log out as different people. But these roles are your responsibility, or what you're responsible for. So when things change from a 0 to a 3 or a 13, then there might be something in that queue that needs my attention. I can click on it and go in there and take care of it. Obviously, if it's a 0, there's nothing in there. I don't have to worry about it. And then I have this electronic file cabinet kind of capabilities, like find payables, active or complete. If I'm looking for something in particular, I don't have to dig around in file cabinets, figure out whose desk it's on or whose home it's at today. I can click that and enter the parameters that I'm looking for, vendor number, invoice number, purchase order number, something like that. And the system goes out and finds all the matching documents and delivers them right back in the browser here in a second or two. So really makes you more efficient when you need to something, when you get a call from a vendor or something like that, and you're looking for something, you can see all that information right here. So if I go into this queue up here that says waiting for payment, where I have 2 invoices in there, let's open that up. And I've got a couple invoices here, a couple invoices that we just pulled in, Tailspin and Fabricam. They're in this queue. The purpose of this queue is once we hand something off to Microsoft Dynamics, we put it in here so that once you do pay that transaction over there, we can pull that payment information back. And then now you can search in MetaViewer by payment number or something like that, and then retrieve all the invoices that were associated with a particular payment number. So if I click on one of these, let's look at this Tailspin one here, for example. So if I click on that and I go in there, over here on the right-hand side, here's the series of checks and balances that we ran across that invoice. Since everything was a perfect match, we automatically matched that to the product receipt 107021 for this particular purchase order. And then nobody touched it. It came in, we extracted the data, we validated everything, we matched it, and then we pushed it over into BC, and now you can just post that transaction for payment. If for some reason it failed to match, and that's where I have a queue for that, right? So if I go into my preparation queue over here, we just hop over there. So we'll come back to the non-PO invoices. They kind of usually all begin their journey through here. But down here at the bottom, I have some purchase order related invoices that fail to match for some reason. So if I were to click on that, I can drill down and I can look at that invoice. So over here on the right, I can see the sum of the imported lines does not match the pay amount. So as a user, I actually have links, as I kind of talked about in the overview. One of the powerful things of an automation solution is I have everything at my fingertips here to help me make my decision. So what I can do here is to try and figure out why they didn't match. I have above the invoice, I have a tab called Related Documents, and this allows me the system to automatically link to other documents that I might want to know to see to help me decide what I'm going to do here. So we have payable supporting documents where I can either add additional ones, or you see this view where I have a 1 after it, which shows I have one. If I click on that, a payable supporting document is something that matches this invoice by company, vendor, and then either invoice number or purchase order number. So you can see here's an example. When you create the purchase order, if you emailed it to the vendor or maybe blind copied the MetaViewer system, we can pull that purchase order into the system as a supporting document. And then when invoices come in, they're automatically matched up. Likewise, vendor supporting documents, add or view, that would be something that only matches by company and vendor. And in this case, if I click the view, we can see an example of that, the W-9. So if you captured all your W-9s for all your vendors, they're available as an attachment to any of the invoices. Other links, we can see other payables that are currently being processed for this vendor or using this PO. And so it kind of brings me up a list of documents for helping me see all that other information as well. If I want to see more information about the purchase order in BC, I don't have to log into BC and look at that. Over here, you can see company, vendor, vendor name, and PO number. Those are all underlined as the heading value. So that means they're a hyperlink. If I click PO number, it's going to communicate with BC to show me the matching data associated with that purchase order. So I can see the information about the purchase order. I can see what's available to be matched to. I can look at all those details. Otherwise, if I wanted to try and fix this, we also pull back who the buyer is. Since we knew who the purchase order was, we pulled the buyer back from the financial system. I can come over here. and I could say send to purchasing, and it will automatically send it to that buyer since I know who that is. And I'm required to specify a category and a reason. A category is really a fixed reason, and we use these categories to report on. So you can actually run some reports to see by vendor what kind of issues are you typically having from that vendor. So now you have the ammunition to talk to that vendor to hopefully resolve some of those common issues, and so more things will process automatically. The reason field is really a free form field. So if I wanted to put some more details of what I wanted the buyer to look at, I could enter that information as well. So if I wanted to try and fix this myself, I can click this Code and Reconcile button. What it does then is it communicates with the purchase order information in Microsoft Dynamics, and then brings that information back to the invoice here. So here you can see the document, it pulled back what's available to match to against this invoice. And if I were to look at this invoice, I've got 171, but you can see I've received more than 171 items of these M17 wiring harnesses. So I can reconcile this out by adjusting the quantities, adjusting the prices of any of these, or in this case, if I actually look at it, if I just erase this last item here, I'm left with 171. In the bottom right, I now have a difference of $0. So I can say reconciled, and now I can that will push that transaction over into Microsoft Dynamics. All right, so then it brings me up the next invoice here, and so on. So let's switch gears here, and let's go find a non-PO invoice and talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to jump over here. So a non-PO invoice, they're going to come in, we're going to validate the information, we're going to talk to the system. This time when I click the Code and Reconcile button, it will communicate with Microsoft Dynamics BC to pull back the purchase order, or I'm sorry, the default coding that I have set up for that vendor in the system. So you see here, we pulled back the account number, and as a default, your dimensions might change a little bit differently. So mine, I have the dimensions of item group and customer group. If it looks like for this vendor, I didn't have default dimensions set up for that vendor. So I could come in here and I could pick a various item group or customer group, depending if I wanted to apply that. I can also, with the account numbers, I can actually search. If I wanted to change the account number, I can actually search by typing a few characters of the account number, and it communicates directly with the with your BC system to show me only valid codes. I can actually search by account number, or I can actually even search by description here too. So if I were to put in equipment, right, you can see I get a couple codes with equipment there, and so on. So essentially you can kind of add additional rows, accept the coding, add other coding, kind of code it all up. And then when I'm done, I click the coded button. It then can ask me, does this require approval or not? And you can automate the system and say, for these vendors, if they're in certain parameters like dollar amounts or things like that, I don't want approvals. Otherwise, for sake of example here, I'm going to click requires approval. It then will automatically, in my case, it can automatically decide who the approvers are. I kind of said that in the overview. In this case, I set the approver 1 to department 100. If I hit that drop down, I could change it if it's different this time. And the system can also be smart enough to build thresholds in here. So for example, if I switch this to department 600, this invoice amount was over his approval limit, so it automatically assigned that to approver 2 as manager 600. If it were over his limit, it would automatically assign to approver 3, and so on. So that automating of your business rules, it's not up for interpretation. The system takes care of that, and then I can kind of change that as needed. All right, but now I say send for approval, it immediately goes to that person. It's in their queue. They can open up that invoice and take care of it, brings up the next document, and so on. So the other thing that we do is we can use email notification, and you can also specify backup approvers. So for example, if I was on vacation this week, I think the default is 2 days, but you can change that from the approver basis. After 2 days, my backup is going to get notified, and then he can approve those invoices. Or when I get back in the office next week, if he didn't do it, they're still in my queue available to be approved. So if I come in here, and let's log out. We'll log in as Joe here. So in Joe, he's got just a few roles here. We allow him to do some searching. We allow him to search to submit check requests. Basically, he can fill out a check request form, route it to his boss for approval, and then we can make the payable out of it. But here's his approval queue. He's got 5 invoices in there. If I click on that and drill down, I can see some invoices I had before today, and then I've got this one that I just routed to him. So immediately, if he's at home and he logs into Metaviewer, he can see this invoice. If he's back in the office, he can see the invoice. Each step of the way, we can control who has the rights to see and do what here. So we've made most things read-only. We've made a few things, we've hidden some fields that aren't pertinent to the approver. And you can see over here on the right, the audit trail of where it's all been. Users can come in here and add notes. Test, note, Doug. They can pretty it up if they wanted to highlight it or bold it or something like that. And then it stamps their name and the date and time they created those notes. We're automatically adding entries in here too. So you can see here the document was coded by AP user. You're going to see approved by Joe, approved by Sally. You're going to see that stuff automatically appear in this journal audit trail area over here as well. So essentially the approver, he looks at this, he could stamp his approval. He could say, do not pay. It would prompt him for reason. He'd say, cancel the order. He could return it to AP with a note, or maybe he doesn't think it's his. He could say, not mine. So just various things that you do today. You do it on paper, but then you have to walk back down the hall and explain it to somebody. In this case, I can do that right here and be done. So if I say approve, it's going to stamp my approval over there and then route this document along. And that would go back to corporate AP. In my case, we could skip it. We could have it pushed automatically over to BC if you wanted. But in my case, I've got that coming back to this queue down here that says final review, where if I click on that, the purpose of this queue is to really give corporate AP one last chance to look at it. They can see where it's all been, who all touched it. They can come in here, they could escalate it to the AP manager, they could request additional approvals or send it back to the approver if they have a note, have a question. So it allows them to interact and be able to move things around immediately and digitally rather than pushing that paper around. But generally, if everything looks good, they're going to click export to ERP. It's then going to validate that transaction with a web service and push and create that transaction over in your BC system, ready to be posted for payment. Okay, so let's jump over to BC. All right, so I come into BC, and basically from here on out, it's pretty similar to what you guys are used to seeing, right? You're going to come in here, you're going to go, and if you look at your purchase invoices here, I pull those up. I can see some invoices down here. Here's that Tailspins one. That was the purchase order related invoice, and Fabricam, I think that was a PO related invoice. Datum Receivers was another one. Contoso Office Supply, we pushed that transaction. That's the one that we just did. Let's just stay on that one. Let's drill down and open that up. I mean, I can actually post these right from this screen, or I can come in here and I can look at this. And so here's where the power is you didn't have to key any of this information in. It all came over from Metaviewer after we extracted it from the system automatically, any of the coding that got applied or all those types of things. And then to take this one step further, let's say I was looking at this transaction and I wanted to see the document of where it's all been. So on your BC system, if you click this navigate, you now would have a button here that says Metaviewer, and I can do find payables, find supporting documents. If I wanted to see the purchase order, I wanted to see something that was attached in Metaviewer, or I can actually even create a supporting document. So right from here, if I click that button, I can actually add another document to Metaviewer that is linked to this transaction, or I can actually search for that document directly in Metaviewer. So if I click find payables, for example, on this one, what it's going to do is it's going to execute a search, and you can see it drills me right down to the document in Metaviewer. And I've got my default view here. I've got a lot of these things hidden, but I can actually expand some of this stuff out, right? And then the coding down here as well, if I wanted to move that up. And I can adjust this so that my defaults automatically expand all this out. But now I can see where it's all been. This is that test note Doug. Document was coded. It was approved by Doug, approved by Joe, actually. All those types of things I can see right here. Okay, so really trying what the purpose here is that if you're already looking at the transaction here, we want to make it easy as possible for you to retrieve the document. We don't want you to have to go over and fire up the browser and retype the information that you're doing here, and that's why we put the button on the VC screens here to click and navigate directly to that document. So that's mostly kind of an overview of what the solution does. One last thing I want to touch on real quick is reporting. So all the data that we're storing on these documents is all stored in SQL. So that allows us to build some reports. And here's some of the standard reports that we give clients. An accrual report, that's probably our most popular. So at month end, I can run that accrual report and see what's in Metaviewer that hasn't been pushed over to BC yet. Things like automation, what kinds of things, what vendors are we skipping touching at all, and which ones are we still touching? So you can kind of maybe make some better processes there. Payables processing and approval, times and queues that things sit in, so you can kind of analyze that and refine your systems. But if I just open up this accrual report as an example, since this is one of our more popular ones here. Maybe I did. Okay, it is coming. Patience. All right, so you can see here we pull back the data of those documents into the spreadsheet. We have a hyperlink over here that allows me to click that and drill down and see the document. But I also can take, once we pull that data back, we can build some pivot tables so that you can analyze by account code, maybe by vendor, what you're processing, and you can see that visibility. And any good financial person, once you have this data, you could edit this spreadsheet and make your own pivot tables to analyze this data however you see fit. Okay, so I think that is mostly what I wanted to cover. If I kind of jump back over here, so really AP is really kind of the tip of the iceberg. So we talked about that today from an automation, but we actually have a lot of clients that once they get that solution up and running, they look at other ways to improve their processes. So some things are that we typically add on: expense report workflows, requisitions, new vendor ads, receiving of goods. And then even things outside of AP, like HR and contracts, those are two big popular solutions where we're capturing documents. And a lot of those are really kind of that electronic file cabinet. So if I have those documents and I'm looking for something in particular and I want to manage those documents, I have them all stored in a common place. And you can have roles that allow people to securely be able to access HR documents or not if you don't want, obviously for HR. Security is a big thing there, that we make sure that only the appropriate people can see what is stored in the system. So with that, I think this kind of ends mostly what I wanted to cover today. Here's an email, info@metafile.com, and our phone number there and our web address. If you have other questions, I think we do have enough time for a few questions here that I can address. But if you want to maybe set up a one-on-one webinar with your folks, or have some other questions following the presentation today, shoot us an email at info@metafile.com, and we'll direct you to the right person to help get all that set up and answer all your questions. All right, I think we have a little bit of time left to Q&A, and I think there's a few questions that some folks have submitted that I can answer here.